Have you ever, like, felt like you're playing the game of life without an instruction manual? Um, I mean, you probably know that exact feeling. You're just sitting on the couch of reality, furiously mashing buttons on the controller, just acting on pure, unfiltered impulse.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just button matching and hoping for the best.
Right. And then you get incredibly frustrated when things just don't work out. You get this, like, game over screen in your career or in your relationships or just your daily peace of mind, and you find yourself yelling at the console, totally convinced that the game is rigged against you.
It is, it's a universally shared human frustration, really. We desperately want the win, but we haven't actually bothered to learn the combos. We
Yeah.
just want to, press A and have the grand prize drop out of the sky.
Exactly. Well, let's unpack this today because this deep dive is essentially going to hand you that missing manual. We are unlocking the mechanics of reality today by looking at this really fascinating dialogue. It's produced by Buddha's Practice Incorporated down in Australia, and it's a recorded conversation between a seeker of Buddhist teachings named Venerable Ivy and a speaker known as Consultant Benny. And the production was handled by Notebook McGam and Dawn.
Yeah, and what's immediately striking about this material, I mean, right from the jump, is its tone.
Oh, totally.
While the concepts are obviously deeply rooted in Buddhist philosophy, this isn't some esoteric discussion about, mystical dogma or levitating in a cave somewhere.
No, right at all.
It's actually a highly practical, almost clinical breakdown of how the universe literally operates. So we're going to explore what they call the net of karma, these toxic psychological traps that keep us failing, and the actual mechanics of how things come into existence.
And I think my favorite part, why achieving ultimate wisdom starts with something surprisingly mundane, which is simply becoming a normal person.
Right, which sounds so counterintuitive, but it makes perfect sense when you dig into it.
I just love that framing. So to set the stage here, the conversation starts with a stark contrast between the fundamental nature of reality and the incredibly messy, tangled reality that you and I actually experience on, like a random Tuesday morning.
Yes. The Tuesday morning reality is very different.
Right. So think of the fundamental essence of reality, what the dialogue calls Dharma nature, as this pristine, blank computer screen.
Yeah.
It's naturally pure, it's clear, completely unblemished. But as sentient beings, we don't really experience the blank screen.
No, we don't. We get tangled up in something consultant Benny calls the net of karma.
The net of karma.
Yeah, and that net is just a perfect visual for the human condition. Imagine being trapped in a giant invisible spider web. And this tangling happens precisely because people just don't understand the rules of the game.
They're just mashing buttons.
Exactly. Instead of learning the underlying mechanics of cause and effect, they act on mere feelings, blind impulses. And the result of moving through life completely oblivious to the rules is, well, endless suffering. The dialogue outlines the 8 sufferings, highlighting very real-world consequences. We're talking about the acute pain of, not getting what you want, the grief of separation from loved ones, and a highly relatable one, meeting those you hate.
Oh man, getting stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic right next to someone who's driving you absolutely crazy.
Right.
I mean, that is a suffering we all intimately know. But Venerable Ivy points out a crucial blind spot we all have when this stuff happens.
Yeah.
When people face these setbacks, they constantly blame fate.
Always.
They curse the heavens, right? They blame the economy, their boss, their parents. They completely ignore the fact that their suffering is just the direct result of their own failure to follow the rules of reality.
And consultant Benny drives this point home with a really striking set of examples. He explains that the Buddha is considered perfect simply because he finally and flawlessly followed all the rules.
All of them.
All of them. The dialogue mentions there are 84,000 micro rules, and the Buddha aligned perfectly with every single one of them. It's this expression of infinite precision.
Wow.
But to contrast that, Benny describes a person who operates with 0 rules. He says a completely reckless person is actually worse off than a patient in a vegetative state.
Okay, wait. 84,000 rules. I'm going to be honest. My brain is throwing up major red flags here
I get that.
because that sounds like an absolute nightmare. Like, if I have to micromanage 84,000 actions just to get through my day, how does strictly following rules lead to freedom or happiness? Doesn't that just turn us into, like, rigid robots?
That's a very fair reaction.
And How on earth is someone acting impulsively worse off than a person in a coma? That seems extreme.
It does seem extreme, but that is the exact paradox we need to resolve here. And it really comes down to redefining what a rule actually is in this context.
Okay.
Because these aren't arbitrary rules handed down by some angry cosmic principle. They are physics. It's cause and effect. Think about gravity, right? You don't lose your freedom by obeying gravity. In fact, you can't even break the rule of gravity at all. If you step off a roof and flap your arms, you aren't breaking gravity. You are just violently defying the mechanics of reality.
And gravity is going to break your legs.
Exactly. Gravity is going to break your legs.
Ah, okay. So the suffering is really just the natural feedback loop.
Precisely. It's feedback. So when Benny says someone operates with zero rules, he means they are trying to fly by flapping their arms. They're actively ignoring cause and effect.
I see.
A patient in a vegetative state is still operating in alignment with basic biological laws, right? Their brain waves, their organs, they follow the physiological rules. But a person running on pure, unchecked ego is violently clashing with the rules of reality at literally every turn.
Wow, yeah.
And the source emphasizes that whether you are in industry, agriculture, or commerce, success in any field comes down to perfectly aligning yourself with the rules of that specific domain.
So demanding that the universe just bend to our whims, instead of aligning with its physics, is really just exhausting ourselves for no reason.
Exactly.
And that actually perfectly sets up the most vivid metaphor in this whole deep dive, I think. Benny uses this amazing analogy. He says, ignoring the rules of reality is like stubbornly trying to chop iron with a wooden axe.
It's such an absurd image, but it captures human stubbornness beautifully.
It really does. Like you are just smashing a piece of wood against a solid metal block. You're getting splinters everywhere, making zero dents in the iron, breaking a sweat, and probably hurting yourself in the process.
Yep.
It always fails. It causes endless frustration. And yet, people absolutely refuse to change tools. They completely refuse to admit they're using the wrong axe.
And this is where Venerable Ivy asks what I think is the million-dollar question. If it is so obviously failing, why won't they just put the axe down?
Why not just stop?
It really is the ultimate question of human existence, isn't it? Why do we keep doing the things that make us miserable? And Benny's answer cuts right to the core of human ego and psychology.
What does he say?
He explains that people are terrified that making a change proves they were wrong. They have been conditioned, often since childhood, with this highly toxic mindset. And the mindset is, always try to take advantage, never take a loss.
Never take a loss.
Wow.
We see this everywhere.
Everywhere.
I mean, we are totally obsessed with not losing face. Admitting a mistake, like admitting that our wooden axe is completely useless, is viewed as this massive weakness. We treat it like a loss on our personal scoreboard.
Right.
Whether that's, in a boardroom, a marriage, or just some random argument on the internet.
Oh, especially on the internet. And the tragic irony of this conditioning is just devastating. By refusing to take a loss, by refusing to just say, hey, I was wrong, this tool doesn't work, and putting down the wooden axe, they actually push themselves further and further away from the good results they desperately want.
So they take a bigger loss anyway.
They take an exponentially bigger loss in the long run. They waste their energy, their finite time, their peace of mind, all just to protect this fragile sense of pride.
It's wild how our ego's desperate need to never lose face actually guarantees our ultimate failure. But this brings up a massive misconception I've always had. Maybe you can clear this up.
Sure.
When I think of Buddhism, I usually think of suppressing the urge to want things entirely, like just detaching from desire. But the dialogue specifically clarifies this, right? It doesn't forbid you from wanting a successful career or a happy family or a good life.
Not at all. That's a huge misconception. Benny explicitly notes that Buddhism actually encourages you to pursue happiness. You are absolutely allowed to want things.
Okay, that's a relief.
Right. The Buddha isn't telling you to stop wanting to cut the iron. He is just telling you to drop the flawed mindset, put down the useless wooden tool, and as Benny phrases it, turn back to the shore.
Turn back to the shore.
Yeah, return to the right path. You just need to forge an iron axe.
Okay, so let's say I swallow my pride. I put down the piece of wood, and I acknowledge the rules of physics. What is the actual mechanism for getting what I want? Like, how do we forge That iron axe.
So, to get what you want, you have to deeply understand what we can call the assembly line of reality. This is a foundational concept called dependent origination.
Dependent origination.
The term used in the source text is, I'm going to try to get this right, Zhangyuan Fangshen, which means relying on conditions to arise. It basically means absolutely nothing happens in a vacuum.
Nothing just pops into existence.
Exactly. Any phenomenon that arises and eventually ceases does so only because a highly specific combination of conditions, they call it the yuan, has come together at the exact right time.
So it's all about gathering the right ingredients, essentially.
Yes.
The text gives this example of pure gold or copper vessels. They don't just magically appear out of thin air because you wished really hard for a shiny bowl.
Right, you can't just manifest it.
You can't. They require external conditions.
Yeah.
You need the raw metal, the intense heat, the molds, the specialized tools, and a craftsman's trained hands. And Venerable Ivy summarizes this perfectly. She says, dependent origination means gathering all the necessary conditions for a task, missing not a single one.
And missing not a single one requires immense discipline. Consultant Benny uses a farming analogy that I think grounds this concept beautifully.
Yeah, I like this one.
He says the cause is the seed. So say you have an apple seed, but a seed alone does absolutely nothing if you drop it on a concrete floor.
It's just a seed.
The conditions are the rich soil, the precise amount of sunlight, the water, and the fertilizer. Only when the cause, the seed, and all those external conditions meet does the fruit inevitably appear.
Inevitably.
The fruit isn't magic. It's the inevitable result of the math being correct.
The math being correct. I love that. And there's another analogy in the conversation that kind of updates this for the modern world, which is building a car.
Oh.
If you want a functioning car, you have to precisely combine every single condition and part. The engine, the transmission, the tires, the chassis, the intricate wiring.
It's incredibly complex.
Right. And if you act on reckless impulse, like if you just throw a steering wheel and a muffler into an empty garage and yell, drive, you can't even get the project to arise. It doesn't become a car. It just becomes a pile of junk. A messy failure that the text refers to as the extinction of conditions.
And that car assembly analogy really highlights exactly why we struggle so much. We are totally obsessed with the seed.
Oh, 100%.
We love the grand idea, the startup pitch, the vision board, but we often resent and completely ignore the soil and the fertilizer. We hate the boring, unglamorous daily grind and the external conditions required to actually make it happen.
We want the finished car, but we refuse to read the manual on how to install the spark plugs.
Exactly. We want the harvest without planting the seed. It's such a massive blind spot in human nature.
It really is. So if ignoring the soil is the root of why we fail, how do we actually shift our mindset to embrace that grind, to become the mechanic?
Well, this requires establishing what Buddhism calls right view. And here's where it gets really interesting, because achieving right view isn't about acquiring some superhuman mystical powers. It's about establishing a baseline. It's about becoming a normal person.
Becoming a normal person. See, that sounds surprisingly humble for a profound spiritual teaching.
Yeah.
Let's dig into that, because I really want to understand the psychology here.
It is humble, but it demands radical accountability. Benny explains that on the path of practice, right view has to come first. You can't skip steps.
Okay.
For example, you must deeply understand the concept of endurance or patience. When you face suffering or humiliation or a major setback, you don't just grit your teeth and silently rage against the universe.
Which is what most of us do.
Right. Instead, you have to recognize the actual causes, the specific lack of conditions behind what you are facing. You have to trace the effect back to its root.
I see. So if I understand why I didn't get the promotion, like maybe I didn't cultivate the right skills or I didn't build the right relationships, meaning I lacked the conditions on sipping gore. I'm not just sitting there stewing in anger. I see the actual mechanics of it.
Yes. Because with that correct understanding, keeping rules, practicing giving, and performing meditation become entirely natural. They aren't chores anymore.
That makes a lot of sense.
But if your understanding is flawed, if you don't have right view and you just force yourself to follow the rules because some authority figure told you to, you're going to build up massive internal resistance.
And eventually, you just snap.
Eventually, you will collapse under the pressure of your own resentment.
Wow. Yeah, it's like if you don't understand the physiological benefits of fasting, you aren't spiritually cleansing. You're just angry and starving.
Exactly. Just hangry.
Just hangry. And this dynamic applies really heavily to the concept of giving or generosity. Venerable Ivy points out this massive foundational misunderstanding humans have. We inherently think that giving means losing something.
Right. It triggers that exact never take a loss fear we talked about earlier with the wooden axe.
Which is why consultant Benny delivers this brilliant, grounded reality check here. He says, look at normal farmers. Normal farmers know that giving seeds to the earth isn't a loss. It's a necessary investment that results in a greater harvest.
Yep.
Normal factory workers and normal merchants all know that you have to invest time or labor, raw materials, capital, before you can possess the finished product or the profit. Giving is the prerequisite to getting.
You have to pay the entry fee. But Benny contrasts these normal people with what he calls abnormal people, and I think this is where I had my biggest aha moment.
Oh?
Abnormal people want to possess without giving. The examples given in the text are so pointed. He mentions farmers who want to harvest without ever planting a seed, workers who want to manufacture products without buying the raw materials, merchants who want to get rich without stocking any inventory.
It perfectly diagnoses a modern entitlement, doesn't it?
It really does.
I mean, it perfectly describes modern life hack culture.
Yeah.
We live in an era where everyone is searching for the shortcut.
Oh, absolutely.
Everyone wants to be an influencer without developing a compelling skill, or they want to build $1 million company without providing any actual value to the consumer. We've been conditioned to think that skipping the investment phase makes us smart, when in reality, the dialogue labels this as straight-up abnormal.
It is abnormal.
And I am really struck by the humility of this conclusion. Benny says, a person who can simply recognize their own mistakes is a normal person. Spiritual practice doesn't start in the clouds. It starts by returning to the baseline of a sensible, accountable, normal person who respects cause and effect.
Right. You can't build a skyscraper on a swamp. You have to stabilize the ground first by being accountable. Only from that solid ground can you advance to acquire immense wisdom.
Okay, so let's say we do the work. We become a normal person, we drop the wooden axe, we plant the right seeds, we tend the soil, and we build our reality by gathering the precise conditions. We get the harvest. Does it last forever? What happens when those underlying conditions inevitably change?
Well, that brings us to the final and perhaps most expansive concept in the source material, which is the impermanence of conditional things versus the eternal nature of the Dharma.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
Benny introduces the concept of the extinction of conditions, or Yeonmi. The hard, unavoidable truth of physics is that absolutely everything born from conditions will eventually disappear when those conditions disperse.
So nothing conditional lasts forever.
Nothing. The dialogue gives these sweeping cosmic examples to illustrate this scale. We're talking about the rise and fall of great civilizations, the passage of entire past Buddhist eras. Even Shakyamuni Buddha's own teachings are subject to this extinction. The source notes that the teachings progress through phases from the true Dharma age to the semblance Dharma age, down to the final Dharma age until they completely disappear.
It's almost like a cosmic game of telephone, where over thousands of years, the underlying mechanisms get lost, people just go through the motions without the right view, and eventually the teachings lose their power entirely.
Yeah.
That is incredibly heavy. Even the instruction manual for escaping suffering eventually fades away.
It is a really heavy realization.
Right.
However, Benny points out that there is something that never changes, never degrades, and never fades. The Dharma nature itself. The fundamental essence.
Right.
And here he brings back that computer screen analogy from the very beginning of the discussion. Think of all the phenomena of our lives, your personal successes, your heartbreaks, the rise and fall of massive empires, the passing of historical eras. These are all just images playing on the screen.
Like a movie.
Exactly. They are constantly arising and ceasing, bursting into vibrant color, and then inevitably fading to black as conditions change.
The movie is constantly playing and ending.
But the screen itself is uncreated, unceasing, and unchanging. It doesn't live or die with the conditions. It remains pure and perfectly intact, regardless of whether it's displaying a beautiful romance or a terrifying horror film.
That is a deeply profound image. The screen is entirely untouched by the drama playing out on it.
Completely untouched.
So naturally, Venerable Ivy asks the logical follow-up here. If everything conditional is fading and subject to this extinction, are we just helpless viewers? Like, can we change this process of decline?
And we get Benny's final warning here, which is mixed with a thread of hope. He says, yes, fate can absolutely be changed. If everyone establishes right view and maintains a kind heart, the conditions change, and therefore the collective outcome changes.
Okay, so we do have agency.
We do. But as impartial observers of this text, we have to convey Benny's stark reality check about the current state of the world as he sees it.
Right, what's his take?
He meets that right now, right faith is fading. and evil views are being pushed to their absolute peak. He states very clearly that if goodness decreases and those abnormal people, the ones who want the harvest without planting, who stubbornly refuse to admit fault if they multiply, then downfall and destruction become inevitable.
Man, I'm really moved by that. On one hand, the computer screen analogy is a powerful comfort. Knowing that the fundamental baseline of reality is always pure, safe, and unchanging gives you this sense of deep peace.
It does.
But on the other hand, it places a massive, heavy responsibility squarely on our shoulders. It
Yeah.
forces you to realize that the images we project onto that screen are entirely up to our collective actions.
Yep.
It completely depends on whether we choose to be normal, sensible people who respect the soil, or abnormal people furiously mashing buttons and swinging wooden axes.
The screen simply provides the space.
Yeah.
What we build in that space is completely dictated by whether we respect the rules of the game.
So what does this all mean for us? Let's summarize the journey we've taken in this deep dive. We started by looking at how we often treat life like a rigged video game, right? Getting tangled in a net of karma simply because we refuse to learn the basic physics of reality.
Exactly.
We recognized the stubborn, exhausting foolishness of trying to chop iron with a wooden axe and explored how our deep-seated fear of losing face actually guarantees our ultimate failure.
And then we unpack the assembly line of reality through the principle of dependent origination, learning that we can indeed have what we want, but only if we meticulously gather the necessary conditions, valuing the unglamorous soil just as much as the exciting seed.
We learned that the ultimate spiritual goal doesn't start in the clouds. It starts right here, with simply being a normal person. Someone who is accountable, who drops the life hack entitlement, and who knows they must invest and give before they can ever expect to receive. And finally, we saw that all of this human drama plays out on the eternal, unchanging screen of reality. Which brings us all back to you, listening right now. This deep dive is a powerful reminder of the immense agency you hold in shaping your own conditions. You aren't a helpless victim of a rigged game. You are the one holding the controller.
And if we connect all of this to your everyday life, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think about your life right now. If your current reality is the harvest and the strict, unbending rules of the universe are the soil, what is the one wooden axe you are stubbornly swinging right now?
Wow.
What is the one mistake, the one flawed mindset you are terrified to admit that if you simply put it down could finally allow your true success to grow?
That is a heavy question to carry. But having the courage to find the answer might just change everything. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the profound mechanics of reality. It is time to put down the broken controller, pick up the manual, and start playing the game the way it was meant to be played. Catch you on the next one.